Ward number 6 is a story by the great Russian writer Anton Chekhov. Let's open it and take a look at some of its pages to see how Chekhov wrote about the mental hospital and the themes he explored. If we enter Block 6 in the hospital, we find metal beds fixed to the floor, and on them lie men wearing blue hospital gowns and caps. These are the madmen. They are 5 in total, all from the middle class except for one who once belonged to a higher class. The first one, near the door, is a tall, thin man with a reddish mustache that keeps growing, teary eyes glued to the ground, his hand under his cheek, staring at a single point. He always looks sad. Day and night he keeps lifting his head and sighing, and his smile only comes out with difficulty. He rarely joins conversations and often doesn't answer questions. He eats and drinks mechanically, swallowing whatever they put in front of him. From his bad cough, his weakness, and the redness in his cheeks, you can tell he has tuberculosis. The man next to him on the bed is an old, small-bodied man who moves a lot. He is shy, with rough hair, and during the day he wanders around the ward from window to window or sits on the beds whistling, singing, and laughing quietly. This childish activity and restlessness stay with him even at night when he wakes up to pray, beating his chest with his hands or sliding his finger along the doors. This is the Jew named Muzyka the Fool, whose mind was lost 20 years ago when his shop burned down. Muzyka is the only patient in Ward 6 who is allowed to go outside, even out of the hospital to the street. He enjoys this privilege, probably because he is one of the oldest patients there and because he is harmless and kind. He is the clown of the town, and people are used to seeing him walking the streets in a short robe, a funny cap, sandals, or sometimes barefoot or even without trousers. He stands near doors and shops begging for money. Some give him coins, some give him bread, some walk with him. Often, he returns to the ward full and satisfied, though the guard takes away everything he brings. Muzyka loves helping his friends. He brings them water, tucks them in when they are asleep, tells them, "I'll find money for you outside," and even gives each one of them a new cap. He also feeds the paralyzed man on the left. But he doesn't do this out of compassion or humanity, he does it to spite the man on his right, Ivan. Ivan is 33 years old, originally a nobleman, and used to be a secretary in the district office. He suffers from persecution madness. You either find him curled up on his bed like a sponge or pacing from corner to corner like he's exercising. When he sits, he's always tense, ready to react, irritated by some mysterious thought. The slightest sound near the ward door or a shout in the courtyard makes him lift his head and strain his ears, thinking they're coming for him. His facial expressions in these moments reveal deep anxiety. His wide face and prominent jaws mirror a soul tortured by long struggle and fear. His facial movements are strange and sickly. But the fine lines carved by genuine suffering are wise, and in his cold, mesmerizing eyes there is something that attracts me, because he is polite, helpful, and treats everyone well except the guard. If something small goes wrong or someone whispers something, Ivan jumps from his bed and shouts at the guard. Every morning he greets his companions with, "Good morning," and before sleeping he wishes them a peaceful night. His madness shows clearly some nights, when he twists in his robe, trembling, clenching his teeth so hard they chatter. He wanders between the beds like a feather caught in the wind. Suddenly he stops, staring at his companions like he's about to say something important, but then seems to realize no one will listen or understand him, so he lifts his head and continues walking. But his desire to talk eventually beats everything, and he starts speaking passionately. His words are disordered, shaky, disconnected, and not always understandable. When he speaks, you see both the madman and the human being, and it's hard to write down exactly what he says. He talks about human cruelty, tyrants who violate rights, the beautiful life that will come to earth someday, and the bars on the windows that remind him of the stupidity and harshness of oppressors. Ivan once lived comfortably with his family. His father was a well-off official, they had a house in a nice district, and Ivan had 2 sons, Sergei and another boy. Sergei fell ill with tuberculosis while in 4th grade and soon died. That was the beginning of the misfortunes that crushed Ivan's family. A week after burying Sergei, Ivan's father was taken to court on charges of forgery and embezzlement. He too soon died in the prison hospital from typhus. The house and all their possessions were sold at a public auction, leaving Ivan without any source of income. Ivan had studied at university when money was no problem and knew nothing of misery. But life suddenly changed. He began giving lessons to children from morning till night for little pay. He copied books by hand. Yet he often went hungry because he sent almost everything he earned to his mother so she could survive. Ivan couldn't handle this life. He fell ill, left the university, and moved to his family home in the city. He found a teaching job in a school but couldn't get along with his colleagues, didn't like the students, and soon quit. Then his mother died. He spent 2.5 years unemployed, eating nothing but bread and water. Later he worked in a courthouse, but they fired him again because of his poor health. He never looked healthy, even in his youth. He was always pale, weak, easily chilled, ate very little, slept poorly, and climbing one staircase was enough to make him dizzy. He often had hysterical attacks. Though he was inclined to socializing, his nervousness and appearance kept him distant from others, leaving him without friends. He always held contempt toward the townspeople, criticizing their ignorance and animal-like way of living. He was always either angry at something or speaking with admiration and wonder. But in all cases, he was sincere. And whatever topic he discussed, he always brought it back to the same point: the suffocating life in the city, the boredom, the miserable society, emptiness, tyranny, moral decay, hypocrisy, and how the sons of dogs, as he called them, live fat and comfortable while the honorable people starve. His judgment of people had only two colors, black and white. He didn't believe in anything in between. About women, he always spoke with admiration and excitement, even though he never experienced love in his life. Despite all these temperaments and his nervous nature, the townspeople liked him, because of his good soul and his broken, fragile condition. The troubles of his family always pulled warm and sad emotions from people, and on top of that, he was an educated and well-read man. According to the reputation he had in town, Ivan seemed to know everything. People took him as if he were a walking book. He read constantly, sitting in clubs, playing billiards while flipping through books and magazines. His face usually showed no sign of reading, yet he devoured pages before fully digesting what he had read. Reading was one of his countless habits. He read anything he could get his hands on, even last year's newspapers. At home, he was always reading. One autumn morning, Ivan was walking through the wet streets. His mood wasn't the best, but that was nothing new. In one narrow alley, he crossed paths with two prisoners chained together, accompanied by 4 armed policemen. Ivan had seen many prisoners before, and every time they stirred feelings of pity and embarrassment within him, but this encounter left an unusual impression. He suddenly imagined himself one day being chained and dragged to prison in the same way. He walked away, but the sight stuck in his mind. He couldn't focus or read. When night fell, he didn't turn on the light and couldn't sleep. He kept imagining that one day they might catch him, tie him up, and throw him in jail. Ivan knew he'd committed no crime and was sure he would never kill, burn, or steal in the future, yet he also knew a person could fall into trouble without meaning to, or be falsely accused, and even a court could make a mistake. That popular saying, "The prisons are full of innocent people," didn't come from nowhere. In such a system, mistakes were always possible. Ivan woke the next morning trembling, sweat covering his forehead, fully convinced that his arrest could happen at any moment. He told himself that these thoughts wouldn't have tormented him all night if there weren't at least some truth behind them. Thoughts like these didn't simply appear for no reason. A policeman passed by. What a coincidence. 2 men stood silently near his house. Why were they silent? These coincidences only tightened fear's grip on Ivan. He began to imagine that anyone who walked past him was a spy or an informant. The inspector passed every day in his carriage, and Ivan always pictured him rushing to the station to report that a dangerous criminal had been spotted in town. The sound of the doorbell or a knock at the door made Ivan jump. If he bumped into a policeman or a soldier on the street, he forced a smile and started whistling, pretending not to care. He no longer slept at night, waiting for them to come arrest him, yet he snored loudly, pretending to be fast asleep so the landlady would think, "Ah, the poor man can't sleep. His conscience must be torturing him." To him, that was proof the police would use against him. Reason told him these fears were based on illusion and psychological issues, but the more he thought logically, the worse his anxiety became. When Ivan realized that thinking brought no relief, he stopped thinking altogether. Fear consumed him. He began avoiding people, and the job he already hated became unbearable. He feared someone would secretly slip a bribe into his pocket, then he'd be arrested for corruption. Or he might accidentally make a mistake on a government document and end up accused of forgery. His mind produced thousands of imaginary scenarios that terrified him every day. He no longer cared about the outside world. He barely touched books, and his memory began failing him. Spring arrived, the snow melted, and the bodies of an old woman and a young boy were found, nothing unusual about the cause of death. The whole town could talk only about those two unknown murderers. So Ivan began walking around smiling, telling everyone he met how horrible it was to murder innocent, weak people. He wanted no one to suspect he was the killer. This pretense exhausted him. After some thought, he decided to hide in the landlord's cellar. He stayed there 2 days and nights. When he calmed down a little, he waited for nightfall, then sneaked back into his room like a thief. He stood motionless in the middle of the room until dawn, listening for every sound. Early in the morning, before sunrise, the builders came to the landlord to rebuild the oven in the kitchen, as Ivan already knew they would. But fear made him imagine them as policemen disguised as construction workers. Terrified, he ran out of the house without a coat or hat, the neighborhood dogs chasing and barking after him. He imagined the whole world gathering behind him, hunting him down. When people saw him in such a state, they brought him back home. The landlady called a doctor, and soon he was sent to the hospital. From there, they placed him in Ward 6, the ward of the insane. A year after the incident, the townspeople had completely forgotten Ivan. His books, which the landlady put near the entrance, were ruined by the rain and thrown into the street. Let us return now to Ward 6. One day, Ivan was lying in bed when he heard a familiar sound, the voice of the doctor. Anger shook him. He jumped into the middle of the ward, shouting, "Congratulations! The doctor honors you with his presence. This dog, why don't you kill him? Killing him would be too kind, drown him in the toilet." The doctor heard the shouting as he entered and said, "Why all this anger?" Ivan, furious. "What do you mean, why?" He moved his lips as if he would spit on him and said, "You're a thief, a liar, and a torturer." The doctor smiled calmly. "Relax. I have never stolen anything. Why are you so angry? Please, tell me." Ivan said. "Why did you lock me up?" The doctor answered. "Because you're ill." Ivan said. "Oh, I'm ill. While dozens and hundreds of lunatics enjoy freedom, because your ignorance can't tell the difference between the sane and the insane. Why should I and these poor people stay here, while you and the chief and all the butchers in this hospital, people far worse than us, stay free? Where is the logic in that?" The doctor replied. "Morality and logic have nothing to do with this. Everything is coincidence. Whoever ends up here stays here, whoever doesn't ends up free. There is no moral system and no logic that makes me a doctor and you a psychiatric patient. It's all empty coincidence, nothing more." Ivan said. "I refuse to accept this nonsense." The troubles of his family always drew warm and sad feelings from people, and on top of that, Ivan was an educated and well-read man. According to the townspeople, Ivan knew everything, he was like a walking book. He read constantly, he would sit in the club pretending to play cards while actually flipping through pages of books and magazines. From his expression you'd think he wasn't reading at all, but in truth he devoured every page long before he turned it. Reading was one of his greatest pleasures, he grabbed anything that fell into his hands, even last year's newspapers. At home, he was always reading. One cold autumn morning, Ivan was walking through the wet streets, not in the best mood, as usual. In a narrow street, he came across 2 chained prisoners escorted by 4 armed policemen. Ivan had seen many prisoners before, and every time he felt pity and embarrassment. But this encounter left a strange impression on his soul. He suddenly imagined himself one day being chained and dragged to prison in the same way. He went back home shaken. The image of the prisoners walking with the policemen stuck to his mind. He couldn't concentrate or read. Night came, and he didn't light the lamp, he couldn't sleep. He kept imagining that he too might one day be arrested, shackled, and thrown into prison. Ivan knew he had committed no crime, and he was certain he would never kill, steal, or burn anything, not in the present nor the future. But he also knew that a person could fall into trouble without meaning to, or be falsely accused. Even a court could make mistakes. And the old saying, prisons are full of innocent people, didn't come from nowhere. In a system like this, mistakes were very possible. He woke up the next morning trembling, sweat on his forehead, convinced that his arrest could happen at any moment. He told himself that these thoughts wouldn't have affected him so strongly if there wasn't something true hidden in them. Just then, he saw a policeman walking down the street. "What a coincidence," he murmured. Then he noticed 2 men standing silently near his house. Why are they silent, he thought. His imagination began torturing him. He started seeing every passerby as a spy or an informant. The inspector who passed every day in his carriage became, in Ivan's imagination, a man rushing to the police station to report the presence of a dangerous criminal in town. A knock on the door or the sound of the bell made Ivan jump. When he encountered a policeman or a soldier, he forced a fake smile and whistled as if he didn't care. He stopped sleeping at night, waiting for them to come arrest him. Yet he pretended to snore loudly so the landlady would think he was sleeping peacefully, because a guilty conscience keeps you awake, and he needed her to see him as innocent. Logic and reason told him that all this fear was baseless, but the more he tried to think rationally, the worse the panic became. When he realized thinking wouldn't save him, he surrendered completely to fear. He stopped going out except when absolutely necessary. He avoided people. He feared the police might slip a bribe into his pocket or accuse him of forging a document. His mind produced thousands of reasons to be afraid. He no longer cared about the outside world, even books lost their charm, and his memory grew weak. Spring came, the snow melted, and the bodies of an old woman and a child were found. Their deaths seemed ordinary, yet everyone in town talked about the 2 unknown killers. To avoid suspicion, Ivan walked around smiling, telling everyone he met that nothing was worse than killing weak, innocent people. But the act exhausted him. After some thought, he decided to hide in the landlord's cellar. He stayed there for 2 days and a night. When he calmed down, he waited for darkness, then sneaked back to his room like a thief. He stood in the middle of the room until dawn, listening. Early in the morning, builders arrived at the house to fix the kitchen oven, something Ivan actually knew would happen, but fear told him they were policemen disguised as workers. Ivan panicked and ran out into the street without a coat, with dogs chasing and barking at him. He imagined the whole world running after him. When people saw him like that, they brought him back home. The landlady called a doctor, and soon Ivan was sent to the hospital. From there, they moved him to ward number 6 of the asylum. A year later, everyone in town had forgotten about Ivan. The books the landlady stored at the entrance of the house were thrown out by storms and rain. Now let's return to ward number 6. One day, Ivan was lying in bed when he heard a strange sound. He recognized the doctor's voice. Anger rushed through him. He jumped to the center of the ward shouting, "Congratulations! The doctor has honored you with his presence. This dog! We should kill him. Drowning him in the toilet would be too merciful." The doctor entered and said calmly, "Why all this anger?" Ivan, fuming, moved his lips as if to spit on him and said, "You're a thief, a fraud, and a torturer. The doctor smiled gently. Calm down. I have never stolen anything. Why are you so angry? Tell me. Ivan said, why did you lock me up? The doctor replied, because you're sick. Ivan answered, sick? There are dozens, hundreds, of lunatics out there living freely because your ignorance can't distinguish them from sane people. So why should I and these poor souls stay here? You, the chief, and all the staff are morally worse than us, so why are we locked in and you are free? Where is the logic? The doctor said, morality has nothing to do with it. Logic has nothing to do with it. Everything is coincidence. Those who end up here stay here. Those who don't, remain free. There is nothing logical or moral about me being a doctor and you being a patient. It's all meaningless coincidence. Ivan shouted, I do not accept this nonsense. The doctor laughed and tried to soothe him. He made him lie down again. You ask me what to do. The best thing you can do, the doctor said, is to escape. But even if you did, they would catch you. When society wants to protect itself from criminals, madmen, and troublemakers, nothing can stop it. So all you can do is calm yourself with the idea that your existence here is necessary. As long as prisons and asylums exist, someone must be inside them. If it's not you, it will be me or someone else. Be patient until the day comes when these places no longer exist. Then there will be no bars, no walls. Ivan laughed mockingly. You comfort yourself with nonsense. You don't care about the future. But I tell you, a better time will come. Maybe I'll be dead, but my grandchildren will live in that new dawn. Happiness will prevail. From behind these bars, I bless you. Justice will rise. The doctor watched Ivan's theatrical gestures, entertained yet saddened. He responded, even if prisons and asylums disappear and justice triumphs, nature's laws won't change. People will still get sick, grow old, and die. No matter how beautiful the dawn of life becomes, in the end they will throw you in a hole and bury you. Ivan replied, and what about life after death? You don't believe in it, but I do. Someone, either Dostoevsky or Voltaire, said that if God didn't exist, people would invent him. Even if there were no afterlife, the human mind would choose to believe in one. The doctor sighed. You're a believer. With faith like that, you can live even locked between walls. He asked, did you study somewhere? Ivan said, yes, I was at the university, but I didn't finish. Well, said the doctor, you are a thinker. You can find peace in your own mind. Deep thought, the search for the meaning of life, and contempt for the filth of the world, these are blessings greater than any others. A person can possess them even behind 3 layers of bars. Diogenes lived in a barrel and was happier than most kings of this world. Ivan snorted, Diogenes. He was a madman. You talk about barrels and philosophy, but I want real life. I suffer from persecution, I'm terrified all the time, yet sometimes I crave life deeply. But I fear losing my mind. He continued, Diogenes lived in a barrel because the weather was warm. Let him live in Russia, he'd freeze to death. And you act like a wise philosopher, superior to the world. Have you ever suffered? Do you even understand life? Tell me, did your parents beat you when you were young? No, the doctor said, they never hit me. Ivan replied, well, my father did the opposite. He beat me endlessly. He was a harsh man, a sick bureaucrat with a long nose and yellow eyelids. But let's talk about you. He went on, accusing the doctor of living a soft life, protected, well-fed, reading books, drinking vodka, and thinking he understood the world. Ivan said the doctor never truly lived, only observed life from the outside. He mocked the doctor's philosophical comfort and called it empty self-indulgence. This is not philosophy, Ivan said. This is laziness wrapped in big words. You despise the world, but if someone slammed a door on your finger, you'd scream in pain. This was a glimpse into the story of Ward Number 6 by Anton Chekhov. Anyone who liked it should go read the full story.